Greetings, sinners, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at the new animated mesh eyes that I released about a week ago. Haven't had a chance to do a real video in a while, and I wanted to make sure I got one out on the new eyes because they're pretty feature rich. Now you'll see here on my screen the new package. The new package I set up so that when you wear it, it'll automatically go to your HUD. That way you can either unpack it or you can have access to any of these convenient links to the main store, to the SL Marketplace store. You can pop over to Facebook. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to any follows or likes. You can get the group link or you can get my profile link so that you can shoot me an IM directly. I've already unpacked this, so let's go ahead and detach it. Now, don't forget, if you are not already wearing a full alpha from your mesh head or your mesh body or whatever, make sure you wear the alpha for the eyes to hide the system eyes. Now, the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the HUD. And on the HUD, waiting for our textures to load, go ahead and use our pose stand. So then I'll stop dancing around in the background there. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my eyes. Now you'll notice that there's some smaller iris version of the eyes in here, and there's also the standard version. This actually isn't as big a deal as it was when I first launched it, because as I'll show you here shortly, there's now a way to adjust the texture mapping on the eyes if you would like to make the irises either smaller or larger. So let's add a set of eyes here. You can see, as is very obvious with the mesh head, that the default 0 location for the eyes is nowhere near right. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to hop down to the mesh tab, and we're going to go ahead and get them positioned better. So I'm going to bring these together, and then I'm going to bring them down some, and I'm going to move them forward a bit. Here from the side and see if we're close. Forward a little bit more. And I actually find that on the Catholic heads at least, the eyes really look most natural if you angle them down a little bit. The next thing that we're going to want to do is move the eyes around a little bit and make sure that we're not going to get any clipping. So I go back to the pose panel and I check on the 4 corners. Looks like I got lucky this time and I really don't have any clipping. Just to show you, in some cases when you have the eyes looking like they look fine straightforward, if you go back to the pose and move the eyes around a little bit, you get some really awkward clipping, and nobody really wants to see that happening. So let's go ahead and move these back. And of course the poses on here are also really useful for taking pictures if you want to have your avatar looking at something in particular. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is that texture menu that I was talking about. If you click on the Sinful logo here, you get a menu that has some choices here. You can reset your HUD scripts in case Second Life flakes stuff out and you really think you need the HUD to restart to clear up whatever it is. It's not especially likely to happen, but we all know SL does strange things. There is an option here to get eyes from an older HUD. And I put this feature in mostly so that you could transfer your eye textures from the regular animated mesh eye HUD to the third eye HUD, which I'll get into when I do the video of the third eye. But you can use this to transfer from another HUD into this HUD if you need to. Frankly, I really recommend that instead you use the patcher that comes in the update packages, but the option is there. If you have any questions about that, feel free to shoot me an IM and ask me about it. It's the texture menu that we're mostly interested in here today. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the flip. And to show you why you might want to do this, I'm going to rummage into my inventory here and I'm going to find me some eyes from Conviction called the Apophis eyes. I'm going to find my Omega applier. And I am going to apply their texture, and then I'm going to go ahead and detach that. Open my inventory back up in case I need it, because I'm going to want to show you this other stuff. Now, you see here this has like a blood spot that's really not symmetrical, and there's nothing wrong with the way that that looks. I kind of tend to prefer that they aren't quite so asymmetrical, so I might decide I want to mirror one of these eyes. So if I flip it horizontally, you'll see now I've got the blood spot on the outside. And to me, that's a little bit more pleasing to my maybe OCD tastes, where we've got symmetry. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply one of my textures back. I'm going to go back into that menu, and I'm going to show you the texture size menu, which you can use to adjust the size of the iris on the eye. Now on this page, this menu page, you'll see there's buttons that will enlarge it or shrink it on both the X and the Y axis, or on just one or the other. This button here is an increment. By default, it is set at 0.01, which is only 1%. You're probably going to want to move that up to either 5 or 10% to see a significant change. There are other adjustments that you might make where that 1% would be useful, especially if you are using a very large avatar, or maybe even a tiny one, or as you'll see on the third eye video later, if you were adjusting the skin mapping on the eyelid on the third eye. For this though, let's go ahead and set it to the 10%. We're going to scale up the iris. See, that's a pretty significant size change. You can always reset it to default. You can scale it down. Some people do prefer that the eyes are smaller. You may notice that when you are changing something on the eyes, it does do a hard pupil dilate reset. Sometimes it takes that a second to start moving again, or to return to whatever setting you may have the pupil dilation set on. You can, of course, also opt to change just one dimension. It would let you do some really odd effects on the eyes if you really wanted to. It's worth noting that if you go too small, you will eventually get some texture wrapping, because your eyeball textures will flip around from the back, and you wind up with repeats like you can see here. We're starting to get light in the corners again, and that's because we've shrunk the texture to something like 50% of its original size. But you do have a lot of room to go larger or smaller there on a smaller scale than that. Now once you've got an eye texture you like, the next thing you're probably going to want to do is hop over to the materials and tweak it a little bit. Let's see, before I get too far into that, let me reset that. Let me wear one of the appliers that I'm fond of, and I'm going to apply my red ferrule serpent slit eyes that I like. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to show you how the memory slots work. I'm going to save my newly applied eye texture here. Now, just so you know, it always saves from the right eye. It's a right eye dominant set, because I didn't want to have to try and guess, should I save from the right, should I save from the left, if they're different. So if you want to save multiple different colors, apply to both eyes, save it to the right eye, then apply it, save it to the left eye, and then you can always apply it individually. If I wanted to, I could obviously apply this just to the left eye right there. Now, the other settings on the materials here, I'm going to show you some stuff that I think is pretty cool. Everybody's familiar with RGB tinting. You know what that is. It just tints the eye. But you can also use this tab right here to actually change the environmental color. It changes what color gets reflected. Now this is still tinted yellow, so I'm going to tint the eye itself back to white. Just see we still have this yellow glare here. Now if I move the eyes around, you can see that it's actually the reflection on the eyeball part of the eye that is picking up the yellow color. Now you could make this even a deeper effect if you came down to the cornea, and let's say I want to set a different color, I don't know, some kind of maybe purple, pink, and I'm going to set the cornea reflection to that color, and I'm going to set the tint back to white. And if I go back to my pose thing again, and move the eyes around, you can maybe pick up a hint of the purple in the reflection as the eyes move around. The yellow is pretty strong, so it's not super visible. But those options are there for you to play with and experiment with. I had a pretty cool looking peacock thing going the other day with a purple and a green tinted on a dark black iris. If I come back to the materials here, I'm going to remember that this tells me where the changes take place, so I'm going to come back up to the eyeball, and I'm going to set some glow. This is still left from the last time that I was messing with this, so I'm going to go ahead and set it to 20 again. That will apply it to the eyes. You can, of course, also change the glow setting with these arrows. And now we've got glowing yellow reflective eyes with a pink reflective cornea. It's all good. If you like the way that that looks with the glow and all of that on the eyeball textures, we can also save it with those settings intact. Now if I come back here, it's saved with just the eye texture. And if I come here, it's saved with all of the additional material stuff as well. So I think that's a pretty cool feature. Now the dilation settings here, I'm actually going to go back to a human eye without all the glow to make this a little bit easier to see. You can watch that periodically the eyes will dilate. You can change the settings on that down here. The max setting is on this one. By default it maxes out at about 4 out of 7 frames. And if you want it to go larger to all the way to the max, you can go ahead and slide that all the way up. You can even ask it to not go quite so small when it goes back down. You'll see that the pupil dilation range is totally different there. And then you can also change some of the other settings a little bit. This changes how fast the dilation takes place. It's not a huge difference, but it is noticeable. You see that it constricts and grows a little bit more quickly with that setting. This affects what is the maximum amount of time, the length that the dilation can last. So if you turn that up, then when your pupils dilate, they will stay large for longer. If you wanted quick dilations, you could turn that down, and then it won't start until the next dilation. There you go. You'll see that it's quicker now. They don't last as long. Some people might find that to be a little more dynamic. And then the delay here, the DEL, that's the delay between dilations. If you wanted it to be short delays between the dilations, you can turn it down. Long delays, you can turn it up. And then the variance is added to that delay. So this kind of sets the minimum delay, and then this sets the maximum variation on that delay. So if you wanted them to be short but have the potential to be long, you could flip that, and that would change the delay between the dilations pretty radically. The other thing that is on here is a pupil dilation lock. If you click this, it locks your pupil dilation at whatever your min setting is. So if you wanted to, for instance, lock your dilation large for a photo for some reason, just lock it and then adjust the mid slider, and you can make that pupil dilation as large or as small as you want within range. Now some of the eyes react better to the large dilation movements. If I go back over here to my serpent eyes, you can see that up to a point it dilates as expected, and then after you get past that point it acts a little bit differently. Some people are going to think that looks pretty cool. Some people are going to think that that looks a little strange. So that's all about your personal taste. That's why you can adjust how far it goes. Alright, and that pretty much covers it for the animated mesh eyes. I do recommend that after you save eye appliers to your HUD, and after you get your eyes set up, that you're really going to want to detach them one at a time and then rewear them one at a time, and that will minimize the likelihood that the next time you log in, SL will have reverted things. Because sometimes when you log in, you may have seen the changes that were made to something you were wearing are lost, and that's got to do with the way the inventory cache works in Second Life. If you particularly detach a bunch of stuff all at once and rewear it all at once, it goes looking for the last cached inventory state, and sometimes that won't be the state that you had it in while you were wearing it. So it's oftentimes a good idea to just detach everything one at a time and then add it back one at a time. And make sure all of your saves have stayed. In this case, we can see that my HUD's stayed and my eyes have also stayed. That'll do it for this video. I'll be working on the third eye video next. I'm hoping to push that out here with the 2.29 eyes release as well. Until then, stay sinful.